I can't tell you how many wives I've heard say, I can't believe how stupid he thought I was. Or on the flip side, I can't tell you how many wives have said, I can't believe how stupid I was. And then they buy into that toxic shame. Well, I was just so stupid to believe him. I was just so. And I just constantly come back to them and say, no, this is his shame, not yours. You were being a loving wife who was trying to think the best of your husband. But it's going to have to change for a while until he gets back to being who he was created to be.
Welcome to the Betrayal Recovery Transformation Podcast, where we explore the journey from heartbreak to healing and transformation. Here are your hosts, Chris Rocha and Jen Howie.
On the podcast today, we have Darrell Brazell. He is the pastor of New Hope Fellowship and the director of New Hope Recovery Ministries in Lawrence, Kansas. With over 2 decades dedicated to helping individuals and couples navigate the challenges of sexual addiction, Darrell has authored the New Hope for Sexual Integrity Recovery Manual. His work integrates personal experience, current research in addiction recovery, and brain science to provide comprehensive support for those seeking freedom and restoration.
Yes, on today's episode, we're diving deep into the depths of Dr. Omar Minwalla's concept known as the secret sexual basement. This metaphor sheds light on the hidden compartments of deception, betrayal, and emotional abuse that can exist within intimate relationships. Thank you so much for joining us today, Darrell. We are so happy to have you here.
Well,
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started here?
Sure. My background is that I was a young man who grew up with a struggle with pornography, masturbation, and also very committed to God, knew as early as middle school that I was called to ministry, and yet always wrestled with that place of, but I've got this secret. And believing that, going to college, majoring in Bible, grad school, all those hoops, that surely somewhere along that line, my devotion to God would set me free. And in one sense it did, because God brought what I needed back in 2000 into my life, which was finally an opportunity that I jumped on to share my story with some other men and began walking out in freedom. And so then starting in 2001, I started my first group for men. And so I've been running groups with men since then. Then started maybe a couple years later, my wife started a wives group. And so then I started having more interaction with wives and couples. And recovery got a lot messier and a lot better. Because instead of just hearing the guys report where they were at, then we started having more couple interaction and realizing, wait a second, some of what's being presented in group isn't necessarily the full picture.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, exactly. And so as I began to be more involved with wives and with couples, God really just put on my heart the concept of, what does it mean to be a protector rather than a consumer? And hearing heartbreaking stories from many wives through the years really broke my heart in a way that says, okay, really sense God's calling to be a real advocate for wives who are in these abusive situations where not only is their husband harming them, but many times churches, pastors, counselors, others who are incorporating a system that says, be quiet, be under control, don't rock the boat, be submissive, those sort of things. How those systems just continue to undermine and destroy a wife's ability to know her own gut, to trust herself, to speak up for what is really true and godly for herself and for her family.
Mm. Mm. I already feel so validated. And
I'm already taking notes.
yeah, I saw you grab your
I
notebook.
love this. Yeah, this concept of what does it mean to be a protector rather than a consumer. My husband, honestly, it's taken him probably 12 years of recovery to even get to that point where that vasopressin uh, hormone is being pushed through his system. He's like, he's feeling protective for the very first time. I'm like, oh, you mean like in a while? He's like, no, like ever. I'm like, wait, let me get this straight. You've never felt a sense to protect me. And he's like, kind of grimaced. He's like, actually, no, I didn't. And it wasn't due to lack of character or lack of loving me, but he didn't have connection to that protector piece of him that God really put in him. So I love that we're diving into some of this today. What a great
Well,
quote. What does it mean
and
to be
what
a protector? Yeah.
Yeah, and what's ironic about that is I think that is at the core of I think it's at the core, one of the core places of being image bearers.
Mm,
That as image bearers of God, we are all protectors. But especially for men, there is a deep, whenever I talk to men and I start talking to them about this concept about being a protector, I do see them sitting up straighter. I see them resonating with it. And so, Jen, your description there is really challenging to me in the sense of I'm like, wow, where what kind did no one ever call that out of him? And that's a
right.
really sad thing that he did not have that called out from him, because I believe that is deep in the core of who he is.
I agree. It's something I think that he's always been called to. So the enemy attacked that at great lengths to keep him from touching that piece of him that God had created in him. I
Mm-hmm.
agree.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's that emasculation of that protector of the male, the creation that God had intended all along. And that's such a huge part of the healing. But it's like an inadequacy epidemic that these men think that they're inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that for your husband, Jen, and just stepping into that creation that he has been all along.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
little bit like that, the mistaken identity.
totally. And to your point, Chris and Darrell, there was no one to call that out. I mean, I think we got so focused on changing the behavior
Right.
that we forgot to dive into, or maybe we just simply neglected diving into who God had created him to be. So
Mm.
let's go. Let's do this.
Ah, okay, well, Darrell, I first learned of you when I heard you on the Living Truth podcast, and you were talking about a concept that validated me so deeply to my core. I want to say to my basement. It validated my experience. So I'm going to ask you this question first. Could you explain what the secret sexual basement is that was developed by Omar Minwalla? And why is this concept so powerful in understanding betrayal trauma? So I'd love for you to explain to our listeners what the secret sexual basement is. And then I want to follow up when you're done and say what my experience was when I first learned of this, what it did for me.
Sure. The secret sexual basement is a metaphor that Dr. Omar Minwalla has developed, that actually helps us get a picture or an understanding of what happens in the dynamic for a couple when a husband has a secret sexual life. And so what I want you to do is just imagine, a nice house in the suburbs. You've got white picket fence, you've got two kids and a dog. And if you look at it from the outside, everything just looks, Norman Rockwell, wonderful. This is what life in America was meant to be. But if you look closer, let's say, for example, you could pan back and you had ground penetrating radar, you could see that underneath the house, there was this large basement area. Only this isn't a typical house with a basement. This is a secret basement. Because in this house, what has happened is the husband has gone back into a spare bedroom closet. He's pulled up the carpet, he's pulled up the floorboard, and he's gone in over time and he's dug it out and he's created a whole space here. And in that space, he regularly or even occasionally he disappears from the family and he goes down into that basement and he engages in secret sexual behaviors. And his behaviors might be pornography, it might be masturbation, it might be strip clubs, it might be an affair, it might be prostitution. You name it, it runs the gamut. And I work with men who've run the entire gamut. But the big thing here is it almost doesn't even matter what's in the basement, because just the fact that he's dug the basement in the first place leaves a wife in this place of, who is this person? Because let's play it out a little bit first. So he goes down and he retreats into his basement. He's looking at his porn. He's engaging in his sexual behaviors. Meanwhile, his wife and family are just doing life above on the surface, and they know nothing of what's happening. But where's dad? And they don't know where he's at. And then he reappears. And where were you? Well, I was right here. I didn't go anywhere. And so there's that gaslighting that starts to happen. Well, the other thing that happens invariably is that the behaviors that he's involved with, and even more importantly, the deception that he's involved in, starts emanating some toxic fumes that kind of like start eking through the floorboards. And so invariably at some point the wife's like, something's wrong, something's off. I don't understand what's going on here. What's that smell? And then the husband then, because, he's terrified of his secret being discovered, he's terrified of being exposed. He's also terrified of losing what has been the most trustworthy, reliable way for him to cope with difficulties of life. And so he goes in full blown protection mode. And he's like, "Oh no, you're imagining things. Let's just open some windows. Let's get some fresh air in." And so he convinces her over and over that she's imagining things, that she's crazy, that everything is fine, everything is normal. All the while, he continues to disappear. And then one day, she's cleaning in the back room. She notices the carpet's a little bit. She begins pulling a little bit. Why is this carpet loose? What's that door there? And then she opens up the door and she sticks her head down in the basement. And it's that, oh my, what in the world is this? First of all, why is there a room here? But then secondly, why are those women here? How have they been impacting us? And so in that moment of discovery, she goes from thinking I'm living in this Norman Rockwell world to, what in the world is my world? And then there's often that comes with that, then there's more deception that goes on. There's the minimization. There's the no, it's just this one little thing, or et cetera, et cetera. And so then the deception, the denial, the gaslighting, the stonewalling, all those just continue to increase. And the reality is, until that basement is fully exposed to the light, it's going to keep producing toxic fumes. The other reality is that for many, many couples, that basement and the toxic fumes have been permeating the house for years, often decades. So much so that wives have completely lost contact with themselves because they've been faced with this impossible forced choice. Do I believe the words of my primary attachment, or do I believe what my gut and everything within me is telling me about something's off, something's wrong? And every time she chooses one, she puts the other at risk. So if she chooses to trust her gut, then she knows intuitively that she's putting her connection and her attachment to her husband at risk. And so, especially for wives who, have an anxious attachment style, that's just absolutely unthinkable. So they continue to suppress their gut. They continue to push those warning signals down, and they get further and further disconnected from themselves. And so the secret basement is just an analogy, just a metaphor that helps us step back and go, oh, it also helps us understand that it's not just a man who occasionally looks at porn, that it's actually um, it's actually a covert operation by which he is living a completely different life than that which he presents to his family and to others. And covert operations always do great harm.
It's the makings of a really great horror movie.
Right.
The makings of great, I'm not sure, but impactful, yes.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm a fan of horror movies, but yes, most certainly
Yeah.
Sure.
it is. Yeah.
When I heard this concept, it impacted me so deeply. I was like, yes, that's it. These are the words that I could not find. This is the concept I could not communicate. And it just resonated like almost stronger than anything. Was when it's when the husband says, look, I'm in recovery work, I'm doing all these things, and I've only visited, I used to go to the secret basement every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and this month I've only visited it twice. Look at the improvement. And the wife is crushed, and he doesn't understand why. And
Right.
it's because it's not about the number of times that the basement was visited that is crushing her heart. It is the fact that the basement exists at all.
And the
And
fact
what we
that he
want to,
built it.
and the fact that he built it. It's not about, yeah, it's about that it exists. And what we want as wives is we want that man to put on that protection identity. We want him to pick up that protection sword that you were talking about, Jen, and we want him to get a bulldozer and backfill that basement in. We want him to napalm it. We want him to go into desperate mode. And over again, we just don't see the struggling spouse doing that.
Well, and I think the biggest thing there too is that it's not it's not the specific behaviors. It's not the frequency of the behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It's the deception.
Yeah.
So even before I met Omar Minwalla, even before I did my training with him and stuff, I'd commented on numerous occasions that I can't tell you how many women I've had in my office when I'm meeting with couples, when I'm working with couples, where the wife would say something to the effect of, the hardest thing for me is not the ways that he's acted out sexually. It's the deception.
Mm-hmm.
It's the lies. It's I can't tell you how many wives I've heard say, I can't believe how stupid he thought I was, that he could just continue to tell me these same lies over and over. Or on the flip side, I can't tell you how many wives have said, I can't believe how stupid I was. And then they buy into that toxic shame. How many wives have told me, well, I was just so stupid to believe him. I was just so. And I just constantly come back to them and say, no, this is his shame, not yours. You were being a loving wife who was trying to think the best of your husband. And the fact that you didn't see through his smokescreen and his lies is not because there's something wrong with you, but because that's who you are. You see the best in your spouse, and that is a really good thing. But it's going to have to change for a while until he gets back to being who he was created to be.
I know there were a lot of women who needed to hear what you just said.
I agree. I really like that you said a moment ago that the betrayed spouse needs to ask themselves, am I going to believe the words we tend to ask ourselves, am I going to believe the words of my primary attachment, or am I going to trust my gut? That is quite a conundrum. Because, our attachment styles start so early in life, and to abandon the attachment style when we don't have all the information inside of us does not even seem remotely reasonable. So our gut then sort of I know that my gut got often manipulated. And so as because of the attachment that I had with my mom. And so I grew up in an environment where trusting my gut really wasn't something that was taught to me, trusting the attachment style. And so I like that you're helping us understand here today that in the circumstances, it's not about I was so dumb to believe or this or that, but simply we're doing the best we can with what we have known to be true in our lives up until that moment. I also love that you talk about the fact that he made that basement. It wasn't a basement that he discovered. He nurtured it. Speaking about protection, he protected that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of grief that comes with that. And abandonment as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how this hidden basement sort of develops then in a person's life? We talked about him. It's there's something there, right? So it does develop. It is also grown, and a lot of time and energy is put into it as well. But what are some of the behaviors or patterns that sort of exist to make this a thing? And what are the behaviors and patterns that exist while they're in that basement?
Well, I guess maybe let's just go back and, I'll use my story kind of as an example. Okay. So, growing up in the church, I was a Bible whiz kid. Like I said, I had the sense of calling into ministry early on. There was never a day in my life that I didn't know that pornography was wrong. There was never a day in my life that I didn't know. A day in my life where I was old enough to experience it that I didn't know that lust was wrong. And so for me, there was, my secret basement really even began before I met my wife. Okay. Because I wanted to be this godly person, etc. And yet I had this struggle that I didn't believe that I could talk to anyone about. So it was my secret shame. It was my secret place that I held tight. And so when I married my wife, I'd shared a little bit of my struggle in this arena, but not the full struggle. And so then we get married, and I often say when I'm telling my story, I realized probably within the first week or two of my marriage that I'd made the biggest mistake in my life. Okay. Not because there was anything wrong with my wife, but really just the opposite. Because I realized that I'd just now given the person whose opinion of me mattered the most 24/7 access to discover what a fraud I was.
Oh, good grief. That must have been terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And so by this time, I'm in college, senior in college. I've a Bible major. My access to pornography is incredibly limited. My access to it is very occasional. All right. But now in this terrified place, where do I go? Where do I go to soothe that fear? Well, I go inside my head. I go into fantasy. I go into solo sexual behaviors. I go into digging that basement inside. I've now digging that basement inside of our home because I'm terrified of how do I exist. But if she discovers who I really am, then she's going to leave me. I'm going to be abandoned because that, going back to attachment styles, that was a significant part of my attachment template, was that insecure, anxious attachment of believing that if people really know me, they're going to abandon me. And so for most men who build their basement, they build it in a desperate place. They build it in that place of desperation of believing that it's survival. It's the only way we can get by. And so out of that, it just becomes there's two worlds. When I come up out of the basement, I put on one hat and I talk and I smile. I wear my mask. I'm a certain way. And I do that for as long as I can. And then I think I'm suffocating and I can't breathe. And I got to get back to my basement because that's where I can breathe. And so it really is an excruciating process, but it's also a process of remaining hidden. Because my wife, what she wanted more than anything from me from the very beginning of our relationship, especially the beginning of our marriage, was to know and be known together. And for me, I was diametrically opposed to that because I believe that if you knew me, then you would reject me. And so the need for the basement became even greater. And then also the damage of the basement became greater.
Mm-hmm. This sounds so, I hear this, what you're saying, all the time. And you're working with men directly all the time. How common is this, what you just said? This, I've just given access to the person I care, whose opinion I care the most about, and the shame and the hiding and if they knew who I really was, they'd all leave me. That fear of abandonment. It seems like that's got to be 100%.
Pretty close, yes.
I was just thinking as you were describing that, you must have been incredibly lonely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And lonely was my norm. I was used to lonely. Because lonely goes all the way back to early childhood.
Okay.
And does for most men. And so they enter the marriage thinking, okay, this is going to solve my lonely. And then they quickly realize, oh crap, if I let her see who I really am, my lonely is going to get even worse because then she's going to run.
We're going to add abandonment to the lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can you list off a few of the most common misunderstandings men have about the harm caused in their secret basement?
I think the most common one is, what she doesn't know won't hurt her. That I'm just doing this by myself. And many men have even said, well, I'm protecting her. She doesn't have as much of a strong of a sex drive. So by using pornography, masturbation, or going these other places, then I'm putting less stress on her, less stress on the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the biggest lie they believe is the lie that, she can't handle the truth. That if I tell her who I really am, then there's no way that she can handle it. She will be gone in a minute.
You know what's fascinating about this? Okay, just for a second, because I have these two competing thoughts here. One is, oh, that is such bull, because like women, we could, and you hear this over and over, we can handle so much more than
We birth children.
right. But then the compassionate part of me, maybe even arguably the Holy Spirit filled part of me says, oh, there's the protector trying to come forth. There he is. And he's popping up in the wrong place.
Yeah, but in that place where who he's protecting is himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there is that element of protection. And yes, it is wrongly placed and horribly guided at this point. There is that piece of protection that does exist, but it's being exerted in the wrong place, misdirected. That's the right word. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And the other part I would like to say about that too is, having been, walked with men and couples for 24 plus years now, Debbie, my wife and I are having this conversation recently. In all the couples we've worked with, I have never been astonished by a wife leaving. I have been astonished over and over and over and over again what wives are willing to work through when they believe their husband is serious about his recovery.
Oh, I have full body chills right now.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
And so I tell my guys that all the time because they're working so counter to what reality really is. They have so undersold their wife.
Amen. Underestimated.
So many wives, are they hurt by their husband's actions? Absolutely. Are they
Deeply.
hurt when they realize the deception, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely. But the vast majority of wives, when they see their husband go to genuine brokenness, get the bulldozer out to destroy the basement, dig it up, et cetera, they are willing to work through the hard, whatever is in the way, if they believe their husband is serious about that recovery.
Mhm.
And they're willing to do it knowing it comes at great cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head.
So how can we communicate that to men? I wish that there was something like there are two things here. I wish that I could give a pill, create a pill that I could give women right after D-Day that would help them to grasp that we can't want their recovery more than they want it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can do. You got to, as you say, Jen, detach from that outcome, and we've got to pursue our own healing. And then the other pill I want to create would one that would help the guys understand what you just said.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the next question we have. Darrell, what can a man do to begin to really grasp the real impact of his actions so that he can move towards that ownership?
Well, I think the first thing he's got to do is he's got to do whatever it takes to get sober. Okay.
Such as, what have you seen work for men?
Let me circle back to that in a minute.
Okay. Okay.
Because I need to explain this part first. Okay. The analogy I've used for many years for this is basically what acting out does, whether we're acting out with pornography, sex, alcohol, chocolate, shopping, anything that we're using to distract us from feeling what we're feeling, is basically what acting out does is it takes us to numb. Pink Floyd's famous line, comfortably numb. That's where most people try to live. But the reality of going to numb is it's like putting a layer of ice over our heart, over our pain, over our emotion. And so if you think about that, let's just pick a 40-year-old man for an example. Let's say that he started to learn how to go to numb through sexual ways at the age of 12. Okay, so he's got 28 years of multiple times a week, if not daily, putting another layer of ice over his heart.
Mhm.
And that ice has gone from a few thin layers to now it's multiple feet thick.
Mm.
D-Day hits. Intellectually, he knows he's hurt his wife. This is bad. He wants to be sorry, but guess what? He is numb. And he's got layers and layers of ice on top of him.
So true.
So if he continues to act out in that place, then he's just putting more layers of ice on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he's not finding sobriety, not finding help in order to stop going to numb, then there's no way that he can allow his heart to have compassion and empathy for the harm that he's caused his wife, no matter how in his face, how clear the evidence is. His wife can be absolutely undone. She can have panic attacks. She can go into a psychotic break.
Yep.
And he's going to be standing there numb because of all the ice that is laying on top of that.
Okay, come on, preach.
Mhm.
You're literally
Okay.
describing so many of us.
Yep.
Right. And so because of that, he has to stop adding the layers of ice and put himself in warm places that are going to begin to melt the ice.
And yet that's what they don't want to do. They don't want to feel.
Exactly. And that's what they are so terrified of doing.
That's what they've been medicating the whole time.
That's what they've done for X number of
Decades.
years, day after day, week after week, year after year. And so step number one has to be recognize this is, I open up my manual and I say, you have to ask yourself, do I have a cold or do I have cancer?
Mm.
Because if I believe I have a cold, then I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to get some NyQuil, some Sudafed, some over-the-counter stuff, and an extra box of Kleenexes, and I'm going to try to live through the symptoms.
Yeah.
If I believe I have cancer, then I'm going to my oncologist and I'm saying, you tell me what to do. And if he says I need to be in 7 days a week for this certain type of treatment, and that after, if I do that, then I can live, then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to change jobs if I have to. I'm going to sell my house if I have to. I'm going to go to relatives and borrow money if I have to. I'm going to do whatever it takes to start getting healthy.
Yeah.
The problem in early recovery for so many men is they think they have a cold and their wife is overreacting.
Mm. Like I can quit at any time.
I can quit anytime, or yeah, I know it's a problem and I need to stop it and I'm going to stop it. I'm working on stopping it. I'm going to group. I'm doing just enough to make her think I'm doing something,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't called for the bulldozer yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell my guys all the time, if you own this as cancer, then you're going to say, okay, doc, what do I do? And that point I tell them, this is curable, but it is going to require daily hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And so circle back to your question, Chris, what specifically can a guy do? Okay. I tell my guys all the time, you've got to, first of all, find you a good group to plug into. And groups are, how do I put it? They run the whole gamut from not very helpful to life-saving
Mm-hmm.
groups. All right. But when I say a group, I don't mean going to a group once a week or a couple times a month. I tell my guys, especially in the early first 6 months, you need daily check-ins. You need a daily connection. So in our groups, we have an 8-point check-in. You can go to newhopeforsi.com, click on the online groups box, and actually see what our specific check-in is. I tell my guys, if you want to get healthy, you need to be checking in either in group or in a phone call or in a one-on-one meeting with somebody every single day. And here's a critical part of that. In our check-in process, we have point number 4 of our check-in is, do you have any integrity abuse behaviors? We probably don't have time for me to explain those, but those are listed on our website. Those are on my Protector or Predator, addressing the harms of deceptive sexuality teaching. But do you have any IABs? And specifically, have you been deceptive in any way? And especially, are you clean with your wife? And when I spoke at SILS a couple years ago, I got off my script a little bit and I made a statement that now I circle back to all the time. And that is, I tell people that if your men's group does not ask you as part of the accountability, are you clean with your wife? It's not an accountability group. It's a men's club.
I can hear the applause from the back of the room.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that.
Accurate.
Because unfortunately, as part of some of the vestiges of the old 12-step model and the stay in your lane kind of teachings, One of the realities in many groups is, oh no, don't tell your wife those things, because she can't handle that, or you're going to do more harm. And they hide behind the step that says, make amends except where that will cause harm. And there's a valid point to that, but that is not valid as a reason to hold secrets.
Thank you.
Wives, they deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know the breadth and depth of your acting out behaviors. And that needs to be done well. It needs to be done with a facilitated full disclosure. It needs to be done not just, at 3 o'clock in the morning because she's pressing you for answers. It needs to be done well, but it absolutely needs to be done. She deserves that. She's put up with you for however long she's put up with you. Give her the dignity of letting her know what she's truly putting up with. So, going back to that is, a man's got to get in a context where he's doing group work, where he's doing individual work, where he's working with his, a therapist, a coach, someone who's helping him dig deep into his own roots. Group provides an avenue in which he can deal with shame as he experiences the response of the men around him. Individual work with a good coach, therapist, a good therapist especially, helps him dig deep into his own roots of what's driving these things and the wounds that need to be healed in order to move out of these perspectives. And so it's not an either or, it's a both and. And then as he starts establishing sobriety, as he starts understanding, starts to get a little glimpse of what he's done, then I tell my guys, you've got to be a student of your wife. You got to be a student of her experience. I encourage my guys to read Sherry Keffer's Intimate Deception, Michelle May's Betrayal Bind, different books, different content that will help them begin to grasp what their wife has been through living in the wake of the toxic fumes that have been coming up from the basement. The most impactful material I found in that regard is Dr. Minwalla's 22 room metaphor, where he walks men through 22 rooms, like the image is from a hospital. And so we walk through room by room, different ways that these toxic fumes and the trauma and the abuse has caused harm and caused impact. And I do this in an intensive format I'll be doing in June. I still have a couple spots open. And it's the single most powerful thing I've experienced personally in understanding the real depth of impact. But what's important to know in that is that whether it's Intimate Deception or Minwalla's 22 Rooms or other content or whatever, as long as a man is living in numb, that's water off a duck's back. But as he gets out of the numb, as he starts becoming sober, as he starts drawing on his community of brothers in recovery for extra capacity, then he can start looking at his wife's experience. But here's a real quick caveat on that. Most men need to start by looking at other wives' experience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not their own.
I haven't heard others say that before.
Well, and let me, maybe I'm off here, but here's my perspective on that. Is another quote I use from Minwalla all the time is that the single hardest thing for the human psyche to do is to look honestly at the harm we've caused someone we love.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So when my wife is telling me how I've harmed her, my psyche just reflexively pulls up its defenses and wants to argue and minimize and debate and et cetera, et cetera. And so what I have found is that when my men read Intimate Deception, when I'm walking them through the 22 rooms and I'm talking not about their wife, but about wives in general, and they start seeing it, then at some point they go, oh,
Oh,
wow, I've done that. In my men's workshop and in the 22 room intensive, one of the things we do is we spend an hour where we read quotes from wives.
genius.
And every time I've done that with the men, when we're done reading, there is just such a place of brokenness and repentance. I have to be really careful because it can push men all the way over the cliff into a toxic shame place
Yeah, I
where,
was going to ask about that.
but that's why it's so powerful when it's done in the group context.
Okay.
Because, I remember one of the guys just broke down and he talked about how his wife was on the verge of suicide and he was so broken by that. And for the other men to support him in that, while at the same time feeling the weight of their own wife's pain, is a powerful transformational moment. And if a wife's listening to this and she knows her husband's trying to do this solo, it can't be done. It can't be done. There's no way that a man can stand under the weight of facing the harm that he's done if he doesn't have brothers in recovery supporting him and holding him up in that process.
Well, we're always telling women, you're not alone, you're not alone, you're not alone. Men need to hear that too. This is hard work, and the men need to hear as well, you're not alone. We're
Absolutely.
band of brothers. Yeah. You're sharing so many things with us that I've never heard before that are so validating and so accurate. And I'm really feeling some new, deeper empathy for the man's struggle in this.
And I think that is a reality. Is we think of and I don't want to take away from the wife's struggle at all,
Sure.
but we think of the trauma that happens at discovery for the wife, and it is a huge trauma. Yeah. It's also traumatic for the husband because now what he has relied on more than anyone or anything else in his life is now at risk.
Yeah.
Like in my manual, one of the things I have my guys do is write a goodbye letter to their addiction.
Ooh.
And some of the letters the guys have written have just been unbelievable. I have one of them published in the manual, and it's just so powerful to see them recognize that my sexual fantasy in my head, my solo sexual behaviors, I've had numerous individuals, they talk about how in adolescence it saved their life. They would have committed suicide without that. And
Had a role to play.
it had a role to play. The problem was that it was a friend that needed to be said farewell to prior to being in the relationship with their wife.
Amen. Absolutely.
And it was a friend that they brought into the relationship who did just unbelievable harm, in part because the wife didn't know the friend existed.
Yeah, it's like having someone live in your attic, not to go against the basement metaphor.
Attic, basement, just a hidden place.
Thank you for sharing the steps that men can take when they're ready to take those steps toward healing and relational restoration. What you shared was very powerful, and I've taken notes, and I'll definitely put those in the show notes. I want to go buy your manual now just to read that letter. I want to read that goodbye letter. And
Sure.
quick question: is your manual available on your website or on
It's available on our
Amazon?
website. It's not on Amazon. The
Okay.
audiobook may be on Kindle and it may be on Audible before too long, but
Okay.
no, it's only available at newhopeforsi.com.
Okay.
And I have a ton of free resources. My Protector or Predator teaching I mentioned earlier is a free resource on the website. My YouTube page, I don't do the best job of keeping up with my website. So you can also go to Darrell, you can search Darrell Brazell on YouTube. I have a number of sermons, a number of teachings that I've done at different, whether it's SILs or other places where I've been invited to teach on these subjects.
Two quick questions. What are some warning signs that a man might still be operating from his basement if he's in the recovery process, but he's not actually recovering? What would some warning signs be that you might warn listeners of? And then finally, can you share a word of encouragement to for anyone who's listening to kind of wrap things up with us?
Yeah, there's probably a million warning signs. So I'm a little hesitant there. So I'll circle back to just a critical thing I tell wives all the time. Trust your gut.
Mm,
When your gut says something's still wrong,
Mm.
then something's probably still wrong. With the one caveat that we use the illustration all the time that a wife who's been harmed in this arena, she develops already has an ultra sensitive smoke detector,
mm,
and when her smoke detector goes off, there's smoke someplace. It's not always what she thinks it is, but there is smoke.
mhm,
Her smoke detector, because of it being so sensitive, can't tell the difference between a piece of toast that's burning a little too long in the toaster or the kitchen being fully on fire. But the fact that her alarm system is going off needs to be acknowledged, addressed, and taken into great value.
Okay.
Because if her alarm's going off, then there's obviously more healing that needs to take place. And quite often there's other deceptive behaviors. Because again, men early in recovery typically are focused only on their sobriety behaviors. And what they don't realize is that every act of deception just is a puff of smoke that sends off that smoke detector. And so he may be saying, I haven't looked at porn, I haven't acted out, I haven't. Um, but he stopped at Dairy Queen on the way home and got a blizzard, and he was ashamed of that. And so he took the blizzard cup and he hid it in the bottom of the trash
come
can
on.
as a
Yes.
way of hiding it. And guess what he just did? He just had another act of deception, which is what is the most harmful to the wife. And without recognizing that, he sent her smoke detector off.
I
Yes.
literally talked to a lady yesterday who had that exact thing happen. My husband is gluten-free, dairy-free, very healthy, lots of vegetables at home. But when he travels for work, I'm finding out he's eating Pizza Hut and Taco Bell and he's hiding it. Why?
Yeah.
Why can't he just be honest with me about that?
Because that goes all the way back. That is part of his ritual. That is part of his deeply ingrained patterns of behavior because of the toxic shame that he lives with.
Mhm.
Mm,
And so it's a twofold aspect. It's bringing those things into the light,
mhm.
and it's going back and doing the hard work of healing the things that created the toxic shame in the first place.
You've given us a tremendous gift when you told us that our smoke detectors work, and that it's not necessarily that the house is on fire, right? But something is amiss, and that's a beautiful example of what that is. And it's a gift to us because our limbic system often records things differently. Like, oh, I know this routine, I know something's off, but we haven't learned to fine tune our smoke detector enough to know, is everything in flames and I don't know it, or does the battery need to be changed?
And that's where a man in recovery can step in.
Mm,
And if he owns that he's created an environment where her smoke detector is extra sensitive, then he can step in and say, you're right. I see your smoke detectors going off. He may even have to say at the moment, I'm not 100% sure what's tripping it right now, but I know I've created the environment to where it trips on anything. And so I'm going to spend some time being introspective and looking at, is there anything in me that's causing deception that will be tripping off your deceptive meter?
I love that, because then not only is he validating her gut, but he's saying, I value your gut as well and what your gut has to say. And I'm going to take that seriously and take a look at where am I amiss? That is coming together in recovery.
Absolutely.
Yes, that
That's
emotional
beautiful.
intimacy we wanted all along. Yeah.
And then, Chris, I think there was a second part of your question I didn't get to, and I know we're out of
Oh,
time, but
just a word of encouragement
a word
for
of
our
encouragement.
listeners. Yeah, leave us on an up note here.
Yeah, the word of encouragement I would give first of all, the men. It can be radically different. The men I have showing up multiple days a week in our check-in groups, who are checking in, bringing everything into the light, owning their integrity abuses, owning any deceptions, I see them changing day by day. You really can be in a significantly different place in a surprisingly short amount of time. I'm not talking healed, but I'm talking a man who comes and dives into recovery fully. In 90 days, there's going to be some significant differences when he fully embraces the bulldozing the basement, dealing with deceptions, building relationships with other men, when he sees it as a cancer and follows all the instructions. There is radical change that happens.
Yep, we've seen it.
And for wives, I will tell you, your Heavenly Father values truth more than you do. And as you seek Him in this process, no matter what your husband does, whether he chooses a path of recovery or whether he chooses to continue to live in his delusions, your Heavenly Father will guide you into deeper and better places as you seek Him and seek your validation and your security from Him rather than from your husband, who may or may not be becoming a safer individual. And my heart goes out to every wife who has experienced this, but especially to those who do not see their husband engaging this kind of process, because it is a brutal place. But God will meet you in that place. He is Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. No matter how dark, no matter how painful it is, He wants to walk with you in that place.
Thank you, Pastor Darrell, for what you do, for being authentic, for just sharing your story with us, and all that you've learned. You are a true example of making your mess your message, and leading others out. You know the way out. You've walked it yourself, and we are so honored to have had you on the podcast today. Thank you so much, and we would love to have you come back on and talk about integrity abuse. I'm real curious about that.
Sure.
If you,
I will be glad to do that. That's another favorite topic of mine.
excellent.
And it
All right.
absolutely fits very well into the protector or predator.
Okay.
Great.
Let's do that. All right. Well, thank you. And we
All right,
will look forward
blessings.
to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Betrayal, Recovery, Transformation podcast. We hope you found today's discussion helpful and empowering. For more information, please be sure to check the show notes. Until next time, be kind to yourself and keep pursuing healing. A ministry supported by Pure Life Alliance.